Sun Tzu was a Chinese military general, strategist, philosopher, and writer who lived during the Eastern Zhou period, 771 to 256 BC. Sun Tzu is traditionally credited as the author of The Art of War, an influential work of military strategy that has affected both Western and East Asian philosophy and military thought. Sun Tzu is revered in Chinese and East Asian culture as a legendary historical and military figure. His birth name was Sun Wu, and he was known outside of his family by his courtesy name Changqing. The name Sun Tzu, by which he is more popularly known, is an honorific which means master son. The oldest available sources disagree as to where Sun Tzu was born. The Spring and Autumn Annals and Sima Qian's later records of the grand historian, Shiji, state that Sun Tzu was born in Qi. Both sources also agree that Sun Tzu was born in the late spring and autumn period and that he was active as a general and strategist, serving King Helu of Wu in the 6th century BC, beginning around 512 BC. Sun Tzu's victories then inspired him to write The Art of War. The Art of War was one of the most widely read military treatises in the subsequent Warring States period, a time of constant war among 7 ancient Chinese states, Zhou, Qi, Qin, Chu, Han, Wei, and Yang, who fought to control the vast expanse of fertile territory in eastern China. One of the better-known stories about Sun Tzu, taken from Sima Qian, illustrates Sun Tzu's temperament as follows. Before hiring Sun Tzu, the king of Wu tested Sun Tzu's skills by commanding him to train a harem of 180 concubines into soldiers. Sun Tzu divided them into 2 companies, appointing the 2 concubines most favored by the king as the company commanders. When Sun Tzu first ordered the concubines to face right, they giggled. In response, Sun Tzu said that the general, in this case himself, was responsible for ensuring that soldiers understood the commands given to them. Then, he reiterated the command, and again the concubines giggled. Sun Tzu then ordered the execution of the king's 2 favored concubines, to the king's protests. He explained that if the general's soldiers understood their commands but did not obey, it was the fault of the officers. Sun Tzu also said that, once a general was appointed, it was his duty to carry out his mission, even if the king protested. After both concubines were killed, new officers were chosen to replace them. Afterward, both companies, now well aware of the costs of further frivolity, performed their maneuvers flawlessly. Sima Qian claimed that Sun Tzu later proved on the battlefield that his theories were effective, for example, at the Battle of Boju, that he had a successful military career, and that he wrote The Art of War based on his tested expertise. However, the Zhuazhuan, a historical text written centuries earlier than the Shiji, provides a much more detailed account of the Battle of Boju, but does not mention Sun Tzu at all. Around the 12th century AD, some Chinese scholars began to doubt the historical existence of Sun Tzu, primarily on the grounds that he is not mentioned in the historical classic Zhuazhuan, which mentions most of the notable figures from the spring and autumn period. The name Sun Wu does not appear in any text prior to the records of the grand historian, and may have been a made-up descriptive cognomen meaning the fugitive warrior. The surname Sun can be glossed as the related term fugitive, while Wu is the ancient Chinese virtue of martial, valiant, which corresponds to Sun Tzu's role as the hero's doppelganger in the story of Wu's issue. The only historical battle attributed to Sun Tzu, the Battle of Boju, has no record of him fighting in that battle. Skeptics cite possible historical inaccuracies and anachronisms in the text, and that the book was actually a compilation from different authors and military strategists. Attribution of the authorship of The Art of War varies among scholars and has included people and movements including Sun Tzu scholar Wu's issue, an anonymous author, a school of theorists in Qi or Wu, Sun Bin, and others. Sun Bin appears to have been an actual person who was a genuine authority on military matters, and may have been the inspiration for the creation of the historical figure Sun Tzu through a form of euhemerism. The name Sun Wu does appear in later sources such as the Shiji and the Wu Yu Chuanqiu, but were written centuries after Sun Tzu's era. The use of the strips in other works, however, such as the Methods of the Sima, is considered proof of Sun Tzu's historical priority. According to Ralph Sawyer, it is very likely Sun Tzu did exist and not only served as a general, but also wrote the core of the book that bears his name. It is argued that there is a disparity between the large-scale wars and sophisticated techniques detailed in the text and the more primitive small-scale battles that many believe predominated in China during the 6th century BC. Against this, Sawyer argues that the teachings of Sun Wu were probably taught to succeeding generations in his family or a small school of disciples, which eventually included Sun Bin. These descendants or students may have revised or expanded upon certain points in the original text. Skeptics who identify issues with the traditionalist viewpoint to possible anachronisms in the art of war, including terms, technology, such as anachronistic crossbows, philosophical ideas, events, and military techniques that should not have been available to Sun Wu. Additionally, there are no records of professional generals during the spring and autumn period. These are only extant from the Warring States period, so there is doubt as to Sun Tzu's rank and generalship. This caused much confusion as to when the art of war was actually written. The first traditional view is that it was written in 512 BC by the historical Sun Wu, active in the last years of the spring and autumn period, 722 to 481 BC. A second view, held by scholars such as Samuel Griffith, places the art of war during the Middle to Late Warring States period, 481 to 221 BC. Finally, a third school claims that the slips were published in the last half of the 5th century BC. This is based on how its adherents interpret the bamboo slips discovered at Yingqiushan in 1972. The art of war is traditional. It presents a philosophy of war for managing conflicts and winning battles. It is accepted as a masterpiece on strategy and has been frequently cited and referred to by generals and theorists since it was first published, translated, and distributed internationally. There are numerous theories concerning when the text was completed and concerning the identity of the author or authors, but archaeological recoveries show the art of war had taken roughly its current form by at least the early Han period. Because it is impossible to prove definitively when the art of war was completed before this date, the differing theories concerning the work's author or authors and date of completion are unlikely to be completely resolved. Some modern scholars believe that it contains not only the thoughts of its original author but also commentary and clarifications from later military theorists, such as Li Quan and Du Mu. Of the military texts written before the unification of China and Shi Huangdi's subsequent book burning in the 2nd century BC, 6 major works have survived. During the much later Song dynasty, these 6 works were combined with a Tang text into a collection called the 7 Military Classics. As a central part of that compilation, the art of war formed the foundations of orthodox military theory in early modern China. Illustrating this point, the book was required reading to pass the tests for imperial appointment to military positions. Sun Tzu's The Art of War uses language that may be unusual in a Western text on warfare and strategy. For example, the 11th chapter states that a leader must be serene and inscrutable and capable of comprehending unfathomable plans. The text contains many similar remarks that have long confused Western readers lacking an awareness of the East Asian context. The meanings of such statements are clearer when interpreted in the context of Taoist thought and practice. The text outlines theories of battle, but also advocates diplomacy and the cultivation of relationships with other nations as essential to the health of a state. On the 10th of April, 1972, the Yingqiushan Han tombs were accidentally unearthed by construction workers in Shandong. Scholars uncovered a collection of ancient texts written on unusually well-preserved bamboo slips. Among them were The Art of War and Sun Bin's military methods. Although Han dynasty bibliographies noted the latter publication as extant and written by a descendant of Sun, it had previously been lost. The rediscovery of Sun Bin's work is regarded as extremely important by scholars, both because of Sun Bin's relationship to Sun Tzu and because of the work's addition to the body of military thought in Chinese late antiquity. The discovery as a whole significantly expanded the body of surviving warring states' military theory. Sun Bin's treatise is the only known military text surviving from the warring states period discovered in the 20th century and bears the closest similarity to the art of war of all surviving texts. Sun Tzu's art of war has influenced many notable figures. The Han dynasty historian Sima Qian recounted that China's first historical emperor, Qin's Shi Huangdi, considered the book invaluable in ending the time of the warring states. In the 20th century, Mao Zedong partially credited his 1949 victory over Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang to the art of war. The work strongly influenced writings about warfare in Mao's Little Red Book, which further influenced communist insurgencies around the world. The art of war was introduced into Noro Japan in c. AD 760 and the book quickly became popular among Japanese military generals. Through its later influence on the Sengo period great unifiers of Japan, Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, it significantly affected the unification of Japan in the early modern era. After the Meiji Restoration, it remained popular among the Imperial Japanese Armed Forces. Admiral T.G. Ho Chi Minh translated the work for his Vietnamese officers to study. His General Vo Nguyen Giap was likewise an avid student and practitioner of Sun Tzu's ideas. Taoist rhetoric is a component incorporated in the art of war. According to Stephen C. Combs in Sun Tzu and the Art of War, the rhetoric of parsimony, warfare is used as a metaphor for rhetoric, and that both are philosophically based arts. Combs writes, warfare is analogous to persuasion, as a battle for hearts and minds. Combs compares Taoist and Aristotelian rhetoric, notably for the differences in persuasion. Daoist rhetoric in the art of war warfare strategies is described as peaceful and passive, favoring silence over speech. This form of communication is parsimonious. In Sun Tzu and the Art of Modern Warfare, Mark McNeely writes that a modern interpretation of Sun and his importance throughout Chinese history is critical in understanding China's push to become a superpower in the 21st century. Modern Chinese scholars explicitly rely on historical strategic lessons and the art of war in developing their theories, seeing a direct relationship between their modern struggles and those of China in Sun Tzu's time. There is a great perceived value in Sun Tzu's teachings and other traditional Chinese writers, which are used regularly in developing the strategies of the Chinese state and its leaders. Some admirers of Sun Tzu's work claim that it has relevance in competitive endeavors across the modern world beyond military strategy and warfare, including espionage, culture, governance, business, and sports. Sun Tzu has even been mentioned in pop culture. For example, in the 1987 film Wall Street, the protagonist Gordon Gekko frequently cites passages from The Art of War as guiding principles for his aggressive trading techniques.